The latest edition of Roald Dahl's children's books have undergone hundreds of revisions.
His iconic books, which have entertained millions of children around the world for decades, have received a woke makeover.
You're blowing up!
I feel funny!
Books have been causing increasing controversy around the world lately.
Roald Dahl's iconic books have been rewritten to remove language deemed offensive.
I don't want any. Thank you.
The publisher is also removing the word fat from several books, including Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Young people of today just would not accept that Roald Dahl language.
I don't like the look of it.
If you put Roald Dahl out, as it is now, young parents won't accept it. They won't buy it.
I wouldn't be censoring them, no. I think it's a bad idea.
I like to trust people with their judgment. If you don't like something, don't read it.
Australian author Matthew Riley has been writing action thrillers for more than 2 decades. After selling more than 8 million copies of his novels worldwide, he knows what his readers want.
What's the secret to my success? If you're a one-trick pony, just keep doing that same trick better and better every time. No, I think you're always trying to build a better mousetrap with every book. Try to make the next book better than the one before it, and it's a pretty good recipe.
Now based in LA, the best-selling author says he's not a fan of the current trend of revising and rewriting language in classic books.
One of the words that the Roald Dahl incident involved was the word ugly. And if you're going to be hypersensitive about the word ugly, do you then have to go and find every copy of The Ugly Duckling, which is an old fable which, actually has a pretty good message. I think we always just have to be mindful that books were, especially classic books, were of their time.
Roald Dahl, as they are written, would not be happily read by a young mother to her children. The voice, the tone, the insults, he's got sort of a Donald Trump about him, the way he throws in language and, fat and ugly. That sort of thing just isn't accepted.
The changes in the Roald Dahl books came about after the publishers engaged what's known in the industry as sensitivity readers. The job involves identifying potentially offensive content, stereotypes and bias before the manuscript goes to print. Sandy Grant has been in publishing for more than 40 years.
There's always been sort of expert readers in areas of, high sensitivity, but definitely in this era of more focus on diversity and inclusion, that's demanded.
You've got to allow people a certain amount of intelligence, and you say, well, if they read a book written in, Edwardian England, it's bound to be sort of, very likely to have all sorts of values which we would no longer adhere to or think much of. But people are able, even kids are able to say, well, that sounds pretty silly.
At home in Melbourne, author and former political speechwriter Don Watson is working on his 14th book. He hates the idea that children's books have been rewritten and views it as a form of censorship.
If you live in a liberal democracy and they're the values that matter to you, then anything that interferes with self-expression is something to be avoided at all costs. We don't want to end up on the liberal democratic side imitating what happens on the authoritarian side. That's the danger.
The recent Roald Dahl controversy is happening against the backdrop of a bigger debate over book censorship.
Around the country, efforts to ban specific books or even whole categories of books are on the rise.
The American Library Association reported more than 1,000 attempts to ban or restrict books in the last year, the highest number on record. Sandy Grant says the revision of classic texts is more a commercial decision by publishers and less about politics.
You move the language on, or you stop selling the books, and you don't even have to do it. The public will do it for you. I absolutely understand what Penguin has done in making those changes, and as I said, mirrors a lot of things that have happened in my publishing career, like the Little Black Sambo that we'd published, or the changes that had to be made for Baa the Elephant.
And I think even as a children's author, I'm very mindful of the kind of
the stories that you want to be giving to children.
I wonder if there's anyone in this room who likes to write stories. Any writers in the room?
Australian author Sally Rippin has written over 100 books for children and young adults. She's got a good understanding of what parents today want to read to their children and says classic books can become dated over time.
I've tried to read some of those books to my kids and some of them just don't age well.
What's the matter? He asks, spraying crumbs all over her. Oops.
Children's books really do keep up with the times, so there's definitely much more focus on diversity.
Sandy says there's a genuine appetite from readers to see new authors, and the reality is diversity is a key driver in publishing today and is being embraced by the younger market.
Indigenous books generally, fiction and non-fiction, have been doing really surprisingly well, and children's books amazingly well in children's books, whether it's Adam Goods or Brunner and Bancroft we published. There's been a huge demand, but I feel like the community is really hungry to learn about our Indigenous history.
I think there's a growing space for First Nations writing. I think the larger publishers are taking it more seriously.
The welcome growth in new, diverse voices comes with a plea from some to leave older texts as they are.
I don't mind taste changing, but I do think that people who write in good faith from one generation deserve to be treated with good faith by the next generation and seen for what they were at that time.
How would you feel if decades from now, if some of your work was revised or rewritten in some way?
Well, I'd be really grateful that someone was still reading it, you know, were I alive to enjoy it. But the very thought that someone might be taking my work seriously in 100 years is an utterly joyous one.